questions. What kind of Prime Minister will Tony Blair be? What are his priorities? Who will be in his cabinet? And what will happen to the Tories? How long will John Major stay? And then, on a personal note, we'll also be taking a look at the new First Lady, Cherie Blair. How will she and her family cope with life at number 10? For all of that, join us again at 10 o'clock. But first, the election news coming up now in your region.
The moment that would change history.
Must go, Lucille. This last time.
Promise this will be your last battle.
An ITV drama premiere.
I came only to see you.
Wednesday at 8.
Oh my God, I'll kill you anyway.
The new series of Sharp on Carlton.
Wednesday night on Carlton, we take you back in time.
Putting us off into the peril of an open sea because some of the crew are ill.
A fight for survival turns into an adventure for two children, and a lifetime friendship develops into undying love. Return to the Blue Lagoon, Wednesday at 10:40 on Carlton.
Good morning and welcome to London Today's election special as the capital sees the dawn of a new political era. Conservatives in and around London fell by the dozen, Michael Portillo and David Mellor among the victims. Of the 133 seats in the region, more than a third, that's 48 seats, have changed hands, all of them Tory losses. It was a night of triumph for Labour and the Liberal Democrats. Extraordinary results which have redrawn the political map, wiping out a swathe of Tory blue. Before the election, this was London's political map. This morning, it's a completely different picture. The Tories did have 41 seats, now only 11 remain. In the whole of the South East, the Tories had 98 seats. Now they have just 50. These are the 48 seats in the region lost by the Conservatives last night. More than a third of the Conservative MPs were voted out. 43 of their constituencies were taken by Labour. The other 5 seats fell to the Liberal Democrats in the southwest of the capital. So nowhere has the Conservatives' fall been more spectacular than here in the capital. And there have been some incredible scenes. Disbelief from defeated Tories, wild celebration on the South Bank as thousands of Labour supporters welcomed the new Prime Minister to London.
A new day and a new dawn over London as Labour celebrates its greatest victory this century. And over in Smithfield Market, the news sinks in over breakfast.
About time to kick these parasites out.
The morning newspapers headline Blair's triumph, and the newly elected Labour councillor is slightly the worse for wear after a night of celebration.
People have switched the vote this evening, and yesterday indeed.
Not this evening, it's now 10 to 6 in the morning.
Well, I beg your pardon, the victory has been too much for me, obviously.
But one man's triumph is another man's disaster.
Oh. I don't know, I mean, no, I'm sorry.
Think you can't believe it?
No, I can't actually, no. I didn't think it would be that big.
But it was that big. Over at Festival Hall, Tony Blair's coronation was just beginning as he glad-handed young voters who, for the first time in their lives, were waking up to a Labour victory.
This is just amazing. This is just what I've been waiting for.
18 years. I've only been around for 10, but it was bad enough.
Young people, old people, middle class, everybody's here, celebrating the fact that we have a new Prime Minister.
London Bridge and city commuters make their way to work, bleary-eyed after a night spent watching the results on television.
I'm not particularly pleased, but there we are. It was expected, wasn't it? Not very pleased.
I'm not worried about Mr. Blair, new Labour. I'm worried about the old Labour resurfacing again.
A new era, isn't it? So we should see what happens.
Out with the old, in with the new. London's refuse collectors not slow in coming forward with their comments.
Yeah, I'm glad David Mellor's out. No more sucking anybody's toes anymore.
They had it long enough, them old Conservatives. This lot can't be no worse.
Brickbats and bouquets as Tony Blair and his wife prepare to leave their home at Islington for the last time, bound for number 10. So London awakes to a new day. The Palace of Westminster is changed, and with it the fortunes of the capital. For Tony Blair has promised a new deal for London, with an elected city government and mayor. But promises made at general elections can sometimes suffer in translation. In central London, this is Christopher Peacock for London Today.
Some of the scenes in central London this morning, and some of the people who fought for the campaign in London are with me now. Tory Stephen Norris, Labour's Frank Dobson, and also Simon Hughes of the Liberal Democrats. Frank Dobson, first of all, what was your private guess about a Labour majority?
I got £1 on Labour having a majority of 56, and that was when I was at my most optimistic.
So you lost that, but you don't mind losing it, I take it?
No, I'm happy to lose bets like that every day. I'm exhilarated by the result, surprised by the result, but, you know, there's now a rather substantial burden of responsibility on us all. We're going to be responsible for governing the country.
Also for governing London, something you've talked about an awful lot. Londoners will be thinking this morning, what are they going to do for us, and will they fulfil their pledges?
Yes, we will fulfil our pledges. We'll certainly have a referendum to give Londoners the chance to confirm that they do want a London-wide elected authority and a directly elected mayor. And we'll do that because we think it's the right thing, and we also believe it's popular, so there's not going to be any question of going back on that promise.
How quickly will you do that?
Well, we do it as quickly as we can.
6 months, a
year?
year?
Well, we've never made any off-the-cuff promises before the election, and I'm not going to start making off-the-cuff promises now. We'll do it as quickly as we can. We think it's right. We think it's popular. So, you know, there's every pressure on us to get on with it as quickly as we can.
Steve Norris, you're standing down, I know, but how do you feel this morning?
Gutted is probably the word that comes most quickly to mind. My private view was we'd probably lose by about 120 nationally, and the reason I say that is because in the end you can't disbelieve polls that just refuse to move, and they were refusing to move. That means that I was wrong, and that I was wrong the wrong way for us by a good 50 or 60 seats, and I think if you'd said to me that we'd lose Michael Portillo, I wouldn't have believed you. I really didn't think we would be in that kind of trouble.
Would you concede that you were probably wrong from another point of view, and that is you tried to centralise the government of London? If you looked at the map at the beginning of our programme, that's been rejected. Londoners don't want the government that you gave them.
Yes, I happen to think that the first thing you have to do when you lose like this is you have to have a little humility, and you have to recognise that all those people out there aren't wrong. You can't say they were fools or that they didn't understand. You have to admit you got it wrong yourself. I personally think we will have to revisit the whole issue of London governance. I think we're going to have to readdress some of the other issues that affect Londoners as well as a party if we want to get our finger back on the pulse of people, which is what, of course, as a party we always did. We failed that, and we paid a heavy price. We've lost some very, very good people here in London, as elsewhere, some super colleagues and very, very good men who worked hard. I wish Frank and his colleagues all the luck in the world, because they're going to need it. They've got to deliver something here, and on behalf of Londoners, obviously, I want to see them do well.
It's very magnanimous. Simon Hughes, you also made huge gains in what were Tory heartlands. Were you shocked by your success?
Yes, we were, and like other colleagues, nobody really anticipated what had been really a dam built up, not released at the last general election when everybody expected it would be, and now at last wanting to change, and where Labour were second, they took the seats, where we were second, we took the seats. Labour deserved to be congratulated, and I hope that it really is a new dawn. It's a very exciting moment in British politics and London politics, where you have this change of direction. Whatever can or can't be delivered, and you know, I'm critical of some of the caution, but we are going to go in a different direction. And the interesting thing is that I hope there will be a lot of collaboration in areas where there can be agreement. Frank and I...
A pact between you and Frank?
No, not a pact, but on London government we have a similar view, and it's about getting it right, and it's about making London work in a way that brings people on board. And I hope we can do that. And there are people in the Tory party who will now, I think, be honest enough, as Steve is, to say, come on, we were wrong, and we've got to get it right. Not because we want to in party interest, but because out there, there's a great city to be governed. There are people to be rescued from being on the streets homeless on a Thursday night. And I mean, all sorts of things need to be changed.
Personally, you had a bit of a nervous moment. It was a very close call, although you were doing well in the rest of the capital. Do you think you'd lost it at one stage?
It looked close. I have to say, it wasn't nearly as nervous inside as I gather it was outside, where I was reported to have lost on 2 different bits of the media. And certainly at no stage locally. I might say this is the second general election where this has happened. Some jinx keeps on wanting to tell people I'm gone. I'm sorry, I'm still here. 5 times I'm still here. So No, we had a majority of over 3,000. I've had a low majority in 87. The reality is there was a swing to Labour, and ours was a seat where I was defending against a Labour swing. I mean, it was bound to come my way. The great thing is that we've picked off 5 Tory seats in South West London. I have 6. There are 6 of us now in London, and Oxford West and Abingdon gives us a seat outside. So, and they're very good candidates. I mean, they're not people who suddenly appeared and didn't expect to be elected. So that's a great consolation.
Steve Norris, what do the Conservatives do in London to pick themselves up, briefly?
Well, you know, you do have to listen to Londoners. That's the first thing. And I think if there are lots of things that went wrong nationally for us, some of them going back over many years that we've got to put right and re-examine. But in London, certainly, listen to Londoners, and perhaps we need to be a bit more responsive to what Londoners actually want. I think a lot of the things we were offering Londoners were actually right and are necessary. But I think at the same time what we might just do is to try and be as constructive as we can in any of our opposition to the new government. I think the public actually reacts very well to that, and that'll be better for London too.
All right, Frank Dobson, briefly, you'll be expecting a ministerial car, I take it, will you?
Well, I'm hoping for one, but these things are decided by Prime Ministers, and as I understand it, there isn't any negotiation. It's take it or leave it.
We assume you'll, Mr. Dobson, we assume you'll take it. Thank you very much for joining me. Well, as Stephen Norris said, one of the biggest shocks was the defeat of Michael Portillo. The Defence Secretary, seen as the future Conservative Party leader, was knocked out of his Enfield Southgate seat by Labour.
No one predicted it, but as the final votes were counted, the result could be read from Michael Portillo's expression. Confirmation came just minutes later.
Twigg, Stephen, Labour Party, 20,500.
He lost by 1,433 votes, a swing of more than 17%. And so an astounding result here in Enfield. The man who was to have rallied the Conservatives in defeat, possibly led them in opposition, has himself been defeated.
A truly terrible night for the Conservatives.
For Labour, this was a prize beyond belief.
To be honest, when I arrived tonight, I thought it was neck and neck at best, so we did that little bit better, and I'm delighted.
I don't feel humiliated. There are ups and downs in politics. This has been a down. I try to hold my head up.
And that's how he walked out of the counting centre, possibly into political oblivion. Even his ministerial car will now be handed over to Labour. At a nearby restaurant, the party faithful celebrated.
I felt as excited as when Wales win the rugby, which doesn't happen that often, but it was that incredible. It's overwhelming. It is, yes.
And no one happier than the new MP. A clear winner when he least expected it. In Enfield, this is Gareth Furby for London Today.
And minus the champagne, the man who ousted Michael Portillo, Labour's new MP for Enfield Southgate, Stephen Twigg, is here with me now. Stephen, welcome and congratulations. I was watching last night. You looked completely shocked when that result came through.
I was completely overwhelmed. I think I'm still quite stunned this morning after no sleep. As I said on that clip, at best we thought it was neck and neck, and in reality we thought we were trailing despite a very large swing. In fact, the swing was even larger than we thought, and we're still coming to terms with it in the party in Southgate.
You were coming up against one of the toughest politicians in British politics. What message were you getting on the doorstep then? Why did Labour come to you?
There was an overwhelming message that local people rejected the sort of Conservative policies that Michael Portillo stood for, and people responded very, very positively to what Labour was saying, particularly on education, but also on health and crime and the economy.
What did he say to you after the count? He seems to have been very magnanimous. He's wishing you all the best.
He was very magnanimous. He was very pleasant. It was clear when the result came in before it was formally announced that he'd lost, and he was very pleasant. He was very good-natured, as indeed he was throughout the campaign.
Now, you're being tipped already as somebody who's going to go a long way in this new government. What immediate ambitions do you have?
My immediate ambition is to focus on my new constituency and to start work as the first ever Labour MP for Enfield Southgate, and that really has to be my #1 priority.
And what are the issues in your own constituency that you'll be pursuing?
Well, there are a number of issues. Education is, I think, the dominant issue. There are also concerns about the state of the local health service, and I'll be pursuing that with vigour. There is also the question of Cyprus, which is a big issue locally with a very large Cypriot community within the constituency, so I'll be pursuing that as well.
Finally, there is a personal issue, which is that you're openly gay. That hasn't played a part in the campaign. Has that hardened you at all?
It's been very positive, and I'm delighted that not only was it not a factor in my election, it doesn't appear to have been a factor in Exeter, where Ben Bradshaw's been elected as an openly gay Labour MP as well, and I hope to be able to represent all of my constituents and to join with Labour colleagues in supporting legislation to ensure there's equality before the law and no discrimination on grounds of sexuality.
Stephen Twigg, thank you very much for joining
Thank
us. Congratulations. Well, David Mellor was yet another high-profile casualty here in the capital, and the former Minister of Fun was bitter in defeat. He lost his Putney seat to Labour and then launched an amazing attack on his biggest critic, and that was, of course, the referendum party leader, Sir James Goldsmith.
He seemed a worried man when he arrived for the Putney result. The national picture already looking bad for the Tories. Mr Mellor didn't appear to be at all comfortable. But it was all smiles on the face of one of his rivals, the man who threatened to rob the Tories of votes, Sir James Goldsmith. He brought his daughter Jemima along, but even she didn't cause as much of a stir as the representative for the independently beautiful party, model Atika Poole.
233.
The moment of truth, and for the former Minister of Fun, it was no laughing matter. David Mellor was ousted by Labour.
108.
But Mr Mellor wasn't going quietly. He fought against hecklers, among them Sir James Goldsmith, who was clearly enjoying himself.
1,500 votes is a derisory total. And we have shown tonight that the referendum party is dead in the water. And Sir James, you can get off back to Mexico knowing your attempt to buy the British political system has failed.
What should have been a dignified end, a dignified handing over, you know, I've been a Member of Parliament here for nearly 20 years, was ruined by Goldsmith behaving like a lager lad. But he's finished after this. He's absolutely finished. 1,500 votes, he's finished. He's nothing in British politics. And the sooner he realises that and goes back to his hacienda, the better.
So a rattled David Mellor is out after 18 years, and Tony Coleman takes Putney for Labour. This is Gilly Parton for London Today.
Well, 48 seats have changed hands across the capital, and here to tell us more about the new picture is our political correspondent, Paul Larsman. Paul.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, there's blue blood all over the streets of London this morning. The Labour assault spared neither humble backbencher nor Minister of the Crown.
Linton Martin, Labour Party, 24,000.
The end for John Bovis, London's Transport Minister until a few hours ago, now looking for a new job.
Battersea has been my life for the last 10 years. The people of Battersea have been in my care. I care for them, Martin, and now they're in your care. You care for them well, because in 5 years' time, we want them back.
Well, as the night went on, Mr Bovis was joined on the casualty list by some of the Conservatives' most familiar figures here in the capital. Dame Angela Rumbold, deputy chairman of the party, was another high-profile victim, losing in Mitcham and Morden. In the west of London, MP Nurj Diva lost Brentford and Isleworth. In Harlow, Jerry Hayes is also out and turning on his former colleagues.
The public do not vote for divided parties. The likes of Bill Cash, the likes of Theresa Gilman, ruined the Tory party.
And of course there was Basildon, where Essex man who embraced Mrs Thatcher so enthusiastically back in the 80s opened his arms to New Labour, giving Angela Smith a majority of more than 13,000. Other Tories to go included Jakes Arnold, Gravesham living up to its reputation as a constituency which always returns an MP of the governing party. Gone, Rhodes Boyson in Brent North, Sir John Gorst in Hendon North, Robin Squire in Hornchurch, Hugh Dykes in Harrow East. Charles Goodson Wicks in leafy Wimbledon fell to a 20% swing, one of the biggest in the country. One who hung on despite recent newspaper allegations that he'd had an affair with a 17-year-old nightclub hostess was Piers Merchant, but his majority was slashed from 23,000 to 3,000. Liberal Democrats surpassed their wildest dreams, cutting a swathe through affluent suburbs in southwest London. Former party chairman Jeremy Hanley was ousted in Richmond by the Yellow Horde. Twickenham's Toby Jessel was another victim of Paddy's party. Sutton and Cheam now has a Lib Dem MP, so does Kingston, so does Carlton and Wallington. For the man who used to be our region's only Liberal Democrat member, it was a nail-biting finish to the battle against Labour, but Simon Hughes emerged triumphant.
But for us at last to be winning, not just in the London seats, but out of London seats, as we haven't done for a very long time, is very, very exciting. And it means that London and London's people will have a balanced political view. Some Tories, more Labour, but many more Liberal Democrats.
Finally, 2 seats in West London are now linked by more than just a political allegiance. Alan Keane was already Labour MP for Feltham and Heston. Now his wife Anne has been elected to serve in neighbouring Brentford and Isleworth.
So, Paul, what does this Labour landslide mean for London, do you think?
Well, Lindsay, almost all of Labour's policies for London depend on the formation of this new Greater London Authority and, of course, a mayor for London. I think the thing we have to bear in mind here is don't hold your breath. Whatever Frank Dobson said, this is going to take a long time coming. There's got to be this referendum. That's going to take a lot of organising just to find out if Londoners really do want these innovations. Then there's going to be a lot of detail to be worked out over the next year, probably at least. Then, of course, there's got to be the actual elections. I really don't think we're going to see Lord Mayor of London and the new Greater London Authority much before the millennium. Having said that, when it comes here, it's going to have some very important roles indeed. There's going to be things like economic regeneration, strategic planning. The policing of London is going to be in their hands, although apparently Scotland Yard don't mind being taken out of the Home Office's grip, so they're quite pleased about that. And then very important for London and for Londoners in the short and medium term is the future of the Tube. Now, the new authority is actually going to be responsible for appointing the board of London Underground. And so we're going to see these moves towards what Labour has described as a private-public partnership. They haven't actually spelled out what that means and how it's going to get enough money, and we'll have to wait and see, and we'll be watching that one very closely, Lynn.
Thank you, Paul. Lots to look forward to, obviously, in London. And with me now is the Labour MP for Barking, Margaret Hodge. She's drawn up the plans for a new London authority and a directly elected mayor. Margaret Hodge, first of all, who are the front runners, do you think, to be mayor of London?
Oh, I don't think we've got to that point yet, though I'm sure that Steve Norris will want to put his hat in the ring as a sort of political comeback. What I did was simply contribute to the debate, and the job of the new minister will then be to actually put flesh on the bones. And I agree with Paul about the timetable, actually. I think we will have a referendum, hopefully, in the first bill before Parliament, and then it will probably be, by the time we get elections, it'll be 1999 or the year 2000. But what a wonderful way to celebrate the new millennium, and Londoners want it.
We'll have to wait two to 3 years, you think, still?
Well, I think if you're trying to establish a new authority, you don't want to go fast. We've committed ourselves to a referendum. That will be enacted in an early bill, but that will have to take its time. And I think by the time you've really organised, got the necessary legislation through, the elections will probably be towards the end of this millennium or at the beginning of the next. But I'm sure Londoners would want us to get it right. They've waited for it for a long time, and I think it's really exciting, particularly the concept of having an elected mayor fighting on behalf of Londoners.
And if that elected mayor was a Conservative mayor, you wouldn't be tempted to abolish him, as the Tories did with the GLC?
No. What Labour is about, new Labour is about, is a new style of politics, and part of that is devolving power, is openness of open government, and it's not fixing things in our own political interest. We've had too much of that under the 18 years of the Tories. We want to put power back in the hands of people, and so that they can elect who they want. In fact, the Evening Standard would want us to have a non-political mayor. I frankly don't think that would happen. I think we will vote along political lines, but it will be who Londoners want and who Londoners choose that will be the first elected mayor of the capital.
OK, one of the features last night was the number of female MPs that were elected, 114 women MPs in the House. How will that affect politics in this country, do you think?
Actually, that's the first time I've heard the figure.
114.
114, of whom more than 100 must be Labour MPs. I think it'll be, first of all, when you look in Parliament, you'll see, I think, a flash of colour and women on the Labour side, and probably not more than 10 Conservative MPs, and that will have an impact on the style and culture of politics. Less yaboo, more consensual politics, and I think also women there, ordinary women with families, with children, representing the ordinary women in the community. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think actually it's one of the ways in which we will reconnect people to politics at a time when they feel very disillusioned.
Margaret Hodge, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Well, Tony Blair is now back at his family home in Islington, where Labour supporters have been celebrating their historic victory, and our reporter Marcus Powell is there too.
Well, Lindsay, in just the last couple of moments, Tony Blair's press spokesman, Alistair Campbell, has gone into the house behind me, so it means that Mr Blair is probably up. He might have tried to catch just a couple of hours' sleep after a sort of triumphant return here at 6:30 in the morning. he greeted all the well-wishers who were waiting around the house and retreated inside behind closed doors and closed curtains. But clearly now preparations are well underway for the handover of power. The timetable there seems to be that at 11:30 the Prime Minister, or the ex-Prime Minister perhaps we should say, John Major, will go to the palace to formally hand in his resignation to the Queen. The next stage of that process will be that a telephone call will be made to Mr Blair's house here, and he'll be invited to go to the palace to formally take power. So in a couple of hours' time, he'll be leaving the house here to become the new Prime Minister and drive in triumph to Downing Street. Lindsay.
Thank you, Marcus. An extraordinary moment. He leaves there as the MP for Sedgefield, and by the time he goes to Buckingham Palace, he'll become Prime Minister. And that's where we'll have to leave it, I'm afraid, on the day that the political map in London was redrawn. Mary Nightingale is here, of course, for London Today at about 12:50, at 5 to 1, when she'll be looking at how London life will change under a Labour government. From me, for now, goodbye on an extraordinary day in London.
For a monopoly on crime.
You're nicked.
You're nicked.
Do not pass go. Do not collect £200.
The Bill, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays at 8.
So what have you heard?
The main man is back on the street.
None of us are safe.
Have you a name for me? Cook.
Roger Cook. Cook.
He's back on the beat.
This is worse than I thought.
The Cook Report, Tuesday, 8:30 on Carlton.
Next this morning, we return to ITN for Election 97.
Look at this. Bleach will fix it. What? Bleach on my silk shirt? Don't worry, it's new Ace, the safest type of bleach for all your laundry.
It takes 140 days of sunshine to make a morning as beautiful as this. So whatever you get up to Kellogg's Cornflakes.
Wake up to Kellogg's Cornflakes and Virgin Radio, and you could win one of 40 family holidays around the world. See special packs for details.
We're at DFS.
Let's see what people think.
What do you think of 5 years free credit?
It's great. Fantastic.
And it's on everything.
Did you know anything you choose is free for the first 12 months?
The first 12 months, that's great.
It's absolutely free. Not even a deposit.
And what do you think of the price?
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's very good.
It's real leather, too.
And that's even better.
That's DFS.
This bank holiday time.
At Sidcup, Newmold at Croydon, Milton Keynes, Reading and South Ruislip.
Great value for money.
Want to see our totally new way to get permanent hair color? Breakthrough to new Hydrants, the first water-based permanent color cream from Clairol. Hydrants color cream technology is designed to be gentle to your hair while you color it. By using the power of water, Hydrants deeply saturates every strand with permanent moisture-rich color. Your hair has never felt so healthy, looks so beautiful. Breakthrough to new Hydrants from Clairol. First there was hair color. Now there's hydrants.
At B&Q, a key season price means a really low price on the products you want now.
Everything you can possibly need for your garden. Strummers and trimmers, gas barbecues.
That one's under 60 quid.
Trellis. Leisure furniture.
Gazebos.
Low prices on top brands.
We've got Larch Lamp.
Black and Decker.
Bradstone paving.
Tulips Weather Shield.
How low?
If you find the product
Locally for less, we'll refund.
double the difference.
And that's a promise. Double the difference. If we haven't got it in our garden centre, you don't need it. And that's a fact.
You can
do it when you
feel it.
When you feel good inside, there's nothing you can't do. Try Vita Multigrain.
The countdown is on for the prize of a lifetime. The chance to change your life forever. A ferryman's firefighting fantasy or a window cleaner's African wish. One of 6 finalists will sample their dream for a month. And live in front of millions, do you or don't you?
Change your life forever.
Bank Holiday Monday at 6:45 on Carlton. Now on Carlton, we return to ITN as events unfold towards the transfer of power in election 97.
Welcome back to election 97 on ITV, day 2. Tony Blair promises a new dawn for Britain after Labour's sensational win. His political earthquake wipes out the Tories in Scotland and Wales. 6 cabinet ministers and more than 170 Tory MPs have lost their seats. It's the first day of the new Labour government, the first day for 18 years that the Tories find themselves out of office. After a sensational, unique night in British political history, our role is to make sure you don't miss a moment of what's going to be a dramatic day. As of now, John Major is still officially Prime Minister, but by the time we go off air later this afternoon, Tony Blair will have taken over at number 10 Downing Street. His victory has broken a host of records. His predicted majority of around 180 represents a swing of support from one party to another unprecedented since the Second World War. It's the biggest Labour majority ever, the biggest majority for any party for 62 years, the worst Conservative result this century. The Tories now have no MPs in Scotland, no MPs in Wales, and there are still some important results to come in, notably in Northern Ireland, and we'll bring you those throughout the day as they happen. This morning, Mr. Blair is back in Islington, where he's awaiting the summons to Buckingham Palace. There, the Queen will ask him if he can form the next government, and Mr. Blair will say yes. Mr. Major, meanwhile, has returned to Downing Street, preparing, though, to leave what has been his London home for the last 7 years. In a short while, he'll go to Buckingham Palace to hand in his resignation to the Queen. Over the next few hours, we'll be looking at the stories behind the results and covering today's events as they unfold. Here in ITV's Election 97 studio at the headquarters of ITN, we've assembled a formidable team, and you may have seen us a little bit already. Next to me, ITN's political editor, Michael Brunson, will be assessing a remarkable night. Alistair Stewart and his high-tech graphics will put the flesh on the day's statistical bones. And behind me, in the nerve centre of our operation, supported by a vast array of number-crunching computers, we've got an unrivaled trio of election analysts. Professor Colin Rallings on the left, Dr. David Butler, and ITN's political analyst, David Cowling. As soon as the results are in, you'll see them right away on the bottom of your screen there as they come through. But just to see where we are now at this stage in the day, just after 10 o'clock, let's have a summary. So there, Labour's won, and we're predicting a majority of 179 for Labour. 629 seats in, 330 the winning post, Labour on 417, Conservatives on 160, Liberal Democrats on 41, the rest on 11. That's the situation at the moment. And here are some of the gains and losses. 629 seats in, Labour have gained 145. The Conservatives have lost 174. The Liberal Democrats have gained 25. And Martin Bell is one of the others that have won 4. And look who's out. Michael Portillo in Enfield Southgate, the former minister. Malcolm Rifkind, Michael Forsyth, 2 other ministers, both out. William Walgrave in Bristol West is out. Ian Lang in Scotland and Neil Hamilton in Tatton is out. And there are a lot more. Tony Newton, the former leader of the House. Angela Rumbold, senior backbencher. Junior Minister Alistair Burt, they're out. Now here's a little update of what the situation is from Labour's perspective. Their vote is up 9%. It is the biggest ever Labour majority. And Tony Blair, in a number of speeches, he made 4 between his victory and the early hours this morning, saying, "I will repay the people's trust." Here is the Conservative news, slightly different in character. Their vote down by a massive 11%, the fewest number of seats since 1906, no seats in Scotland, no seats in Wales, and 6 cabinet ministers, unprecedented. There's 6 cabinet ministers out in one go. And here for the Lib Dems, a remarkable night for them. Although their vote was down by 1%, they've got the highest number of third-party seats since 1923. Paddy Ashdown said it was a terrific campaign. Peter Mandelson has said, considering what Mr Major's party has done, he has emerged in a dignified way. Peter Mandelson, a word of praise for the Conservative leader. So it was a night of quite extraordinary drama. The joy of victory on the one side, the bitter taste of defeat on the other. With Labour in and the Tories out, Kevin Dunn looks back now at what happened as the voters turned winners into losers and losers into winners.
Even as he arrived for his count at Sedgefield, it was clear to Tony Blair and his supporters that he was Prime Minister-elect, having led Labour to a landslide, the like of which the party has not seen this century. He thanked party workers and officials and paused particularly to thank his wife Cherie and his father Leo.
I know that for him, like me, all that could have made this moment complete was that my mother was here as well.
Mr Blair then addressed the wider constituency.
We are a great country. The British people are a great people. There is no greater honour than to serve them, and serve them we will. Thank you.
It was a moment for Mr Blair's children, rarely seen in public, to enjoy too. By contrast, John Major arrived for the count in his safe Huntingdon seat, knowing that he had presided over an electoral disaster and ready to concede defeat quickly and publicly.
Tonight, we have been comprehensively defeated. We will listen to the voice of the electorate. We will consider what has been said to us. I think we must reflect upon it. I know that we will.
He left for a long drive to London and an audience with the Queen to tender his resignation. Paddy Ashdown's night began with a pint of stout, but soon it was champagne all the way for the Liberal Democrats, lifted by their leader's honest and energetic campaign to their best result for more than 50 years. Mr Ashdown said the Liberal Democrats would use their new strength to raise the issue of constitutional reform.
Fighting now to be the cornerstone, the rock upon which we can build a new and modern constitution for our country that will begin to rebuild the bridge between the government and the governed, and bring about, ladies and gentlemen, bring about, colleagues, what I believe will be a parliament of historic reform in this country in the years ahead.
2 streets away, a very different atmosphere prevailed at Central Office, scene of victory celebrations on each of the last 4 election nights, but not this time. John Major seemed at times close to tears, appearing to take personally the loss of Conservative government and the loss of colleagues like Mr Portillo.
We've lost temporarily, I hope, some colleagues, both senior and not so senior, who still have a lot of service to give this country and this party, and who will, I hope, be back where they should be, in the House of Commons, serving us all. And they lost, from what I saw of it, with a dignity that made me as proud of this party as I have been aware.
Flying down from Teesside, Tony and Cherie Blair shared a rare quiet moment to reflect on the night's momentous events. Ahead of them, the party and past and present party leaders were in full swing. And Mr. Blair received something of a rock star's welcome as he heralded a new government for a new era.
A new dawn has broken, has it not? We always said that if we had the courage to change, then we could do it, and we did it. Now we have the chance to make things happen. And we take that responsibility upon us, and we say we shall discharge it, and we shall make this country as proud of us as tonight we are proud of them. Thank you very much indeed.
Mr. Blair's next appointment is with Buckingham Palace and with New Labour's destiny. Kevin Dunn, ITN.
Meanwhile, as we said earlier, some very big Tory names lost their seats last night. Former Cabinet Ministers Michael Portillo, Malcolm Rifkin, Ian Lang, only 3 of them. Tory Eurosceptics took a pretty big hammering as well. Helen Wright now reports on the Conservative losers.
Twigg, Stephen, Labour Party, 20,000.
That result claimed the most prized Tory scalp of the night, Michael Portillo's. As well as his 15,000 majority, the former Defence Secretary also lost the chance to contend the party leadership, though he said he has no intention of bowing out of Conservative politics completely.
A truly terrible night for the Conservatives. I would have wished to have been part of rebuilding it inside the House of Commons. I can't now do that, but I would like to do whatever I can from the wings.
Another senior cabinet casualty, Michael Forsyth. The voters of Stirling dismissed the former Scottish Secretary who's fought tooth and nail against devolution. Here's one of the losses that means the Tories hold no Scottish seats. There, Malcolm Rifkin's reputation as a great political survivor was also destroyed. His Edinburgh Pentland seat a Labour gain. Elsewhere, cabinet heads continued to roll as former Board of Trade President Ian Lang lost his seat to the Scottish National Party.
Leslie, Christopher Michael,
the Labour Party.
22,000.
And in Shipley, a 24-year-old ejected Tory backbench grandee, Sir Marcus Fox, who served in the constituency for 27 years. Another one of the party's most colourful characters, Edwina Currie, also failed to hold her seat. She blamed public disillusion over Tory infighting on Europe.
Whatever the British electorate think of Europe, or of Monsieur Santerre, or of anything else that goes on in Brussels, the fact is they know we're in it and we have to make the most of it. And until my party gets its head round that fact, we are likely to face continued defeat.
The issue of Europe was also high on the agenda in Putney, where a defeated David Mellor was barracked by referendum party leader Sir James Goldsmith.
And we have shown tonight that the referendum party is dead in the water. And Sir James, you can get off back to Mexico knowing your attempt to buy the British political system has failed.
The man at the centre of the Cash for Questions row, Neil Hamilton, was also defeated, along with Norman Lamont, William Waldegrave and Dame Angela Rumbold. And in another shock result, Labour took Braintree from a crestfallen leader of the House, Tony Newton. Helen Wright, ITN.
All through last night we told this story, not least through Alistair's battleground of seats that Labour had to gain. Alistair.
Jonathan, Labour's determination to win this election resulted in a military-style discipline, a military-style strategy, and that demanded a battleground. And here it is, the list of the seats that Labour had to win if it were to win this election. Listed by the ease with which Labour could win them. These are the easiest ones at the top in this column, going across through 2% swing, 3% swing, 4% swing, 5% swing. At this point, around about 4.5%, Labour would have begun to build its majority. Well, just have a look and see what actually happened. 10 out of 10, or in reality, 60 out of 60. Shunt it down, further still getting into even more difficult territory for Labour to win. 6 out of every 100 people changing their minds. 7, 8, a blip there. Colchester goes to the Liberal Democrats. 9, Brecon and Radnor we're waiting for later on today. It's only when you get to a 10% swing, more than twice the amount that Labour needed to win this election, that you start to see a few bits of Tory blue. Shunted again, further back to get into the most difficult areas. 9, 10, 11, 12 out of every 100 people changing their minds and going for the Labour Party. It's only right down here in the 13 and 14% territories that you start to see any kind of significant result for the Tories. So how did you, because it was your votes that decided it, bring all of that about? Let's lose the battleground and bring in and show you precisely how you voted in the general election of 1997. 45% of you backed the Labour Party, 31% of you backed the Conservative Party, 17% of you backed the Liberal Democrats, and 7% on the others. But how does that compare with how you voted 5 years ago? The Labour vote is up 9.2%. The Tory vote crashes down by 11.4%, and the Liberal Democrats, although they had a good night, their national vote actually fell by 1.2%. That is the swing of just over 10%. So let's lose that again and bring back in to show you where all of those people that you elected end up and start to do their business. Let's bring back in the House of Commons for you here in the studios, reminding you that here on the right are the government benches and on the left the opposition benches. Let's colour it in, and for the first time in nearly 20 years, Labour are over here on the government benches with 419 seats. The Tories in opposition for the first time in nearly 20 years, 166 of them. Lib Dems, as I said, a good night. There'll be 45 of them, and the others, Plaid Cymru, Scott Nats had a good night. They gained 3. All of the others put together, 29. Crunch it up, and you will see from all of that that Mr. Blair enjoys a majority unprecedented of 179. Jonathan.
And that image and that figure, 179, is the story. It is the massive victory of the Labour Party that now takes power in Britain for the first time in 18 years. It is their hour, their day.
Very much, but now, of course, their 5 years, and so we're going to move very quickly onto their agenda. And, of course, it's all set out. There it is, the familiar Labour Party manifesto, but, of course, you remember that in the back of that there are 5 very specific things that Tony Blair has pledged, not just hoped, but pledged he will do. Cutting class sizes, fast-track punishment for young offenders, cutting waiting lists in the NHS, getting 250,000 young people back to work, and cutting VAT on heating, and all of that to be ready for the Queen's speech in just 12 days' time.
It is a tremendous amount. We'll be exploring some of that during the day. But now, in a moment, we'll be looking at how the handover of power takes place. We'll be going over to Buckingham Palace, where both John Major and Tony Blair will see the Queen later today. And a record number of women at Westminster. What differences will that make? Join us in a few minutes.
Good meal ideas, but can't think what to do. Iceland make it easy, the problem solved for you. If an Iceland's family favorites, ooh, did you know they're all in?
Bernard Matthews Golden Drummers half price. Iceland cones have 50p off, and McVitie's American Dream Florida Orange Pie, that's half price too.
Iceland make it easy. Mum. Are you in the know about Cheerios?
I know, I like them.
What about nutrition?
Nutrition.
Corn, oats, rice, and wheat. 4-grain nutrition and not too sweet.
What, in one cereal?
Yeah, but only in Cheerios.
Did you know that?
Oh, I know that.
4-grain nutrition and 1 great taste. Cheerios.
Nothing can give you a cool mental lift like Wall's Solero. Exotic fruit puree and creamy vanilla ice cream all in one. Now in the new citrus flavour, Wall Solero, the mind cooler.
Now the leader of the old El Paso party.
People, the time has come to unite under one party, the old El Paso party. Time to get back to basics. Authentic flour tortillas, new cooking sauce, sizzling chicken. These are the values that bring people together, central to our vision of a united people. The fajita is in your hands. Vote Old El Paso. Join the party.
Looking for cheaper car insurance? Try Admiral and 0800 600 800. I know what you're thinking. Another Admiral advert. So you can save pounds on your car insurance. It's not exactly Shakespeare, but I do know Admiral save people a lot of money.
If you want cheaper car insurance, try Admiral and 0800 600 800. That's 0800 600 800.
Can't resist the tantalizing aroma of the new KFC Fillet Tower Burger.
Chicken.
Welcome back with some words from Lord Callaghan, the former Labour leader. He says, "To me, this is like 1945 in spades. I've the same sense of exhilaration as I had then, and I'm delighted to have lived to see it again." And now, just to see where we are, a summary of the national position. So Labour has won, of course, the majority. We're predicting 179. By the end of this day, 629 seats in. Labour has gained 417, well over the 330 winning post. Conservatives on 160, Liberal Democrats on 41, the rest, including Martin Bell, on 11. And here are the Labour results, some of them. Labour's gained Brent North, they've gained Hastings and Rye, gained Crosby, gained Harrow East. And some Conservative results. They've lost Tatton, they lost Galloway and Upper Nisdale. They held on to Lichfield and they held on to Tiverton and Honiton, and I suppose there's a little bit of comfort there for them, but they shouldn't have lost those. Lib Dem results now. An extraordinary night. They've gained Hazel Grove, gained Sheffield Hallam, gained North Avon, an unbelievable result in North Avon, and they held on to Truro and St Austell. And here are some of the characters who've gone. Michael Portillo, Malcolm Rifkind, Michael Forsyth, all from the Cabinet, all out. And Paddy Ashdown, after his night, has said this will be a great parliament of reform, talking about constitutional reform, putting great pressure on that. The Prime Minister still, John Major, said politics is a rough old trade. Sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. And Tony Blair, amongst many others, have said, many other things, have said, the British people have put their trust in us. It is a humbling experience. In a moment, I'm going to be speaking to Neil Kinnock about that and asking him for his views of this night. But now we can go to Scotland, in fact, to the Scottish Assembly, which will soon be in place. And Alex Salmond is, I think, there. Good morning, Mr. Salmond.
Good morning.
Just first of all, before we look at the SNP, what do you make of this national result?
I'm not that surprised. I'm surprised at the scale of it. But in the meetings I've done south of the border, some of them with your good self, Jonathan, I have detected an enormous revulsion against the record of the government over the last few years. And I'm not that surprised that that has been taken out on the Conservative Party, and I think they've met their well-merited demise.
Is it also a victory, very specifically, for New Labour and everything that Tony Blair represents, which is somewhat different from the social priorities that the SNP has?
Well, you see, I think it's one of the great tragedies of this election, is that I think the Conservatives could and should have been beaten on a totally different mandate and a totally different platform. I think a real radical platform would have won this election. Such was the contempt that many people south of the border as well as north of the border had for the Conservative Party. Now, I think that would have been to win on a more honest ticket than Prime Minister Blair has managed to put together.
You seriously think it would have been possible for Tony Blair to not only win, but to win for a parliament and maybe another parliament, which is obviously what he'll hope with a result like this, with the promise of increasing taxes, increasing public spending?
Well, my sense of the mood, I'm not claiming to be a guru of Middle England, but my sense of the mood, for example, in a meeting that we both attended in Nottingham not that long ago, is that people are willing to pay a bit more if it's to fund public services. And I think there's a great feeling north and south of the border that the atmosphere of private affluence and the public squalor is something which should be brought to an end, and that the public services should be properly looked after. And the tragedy of Tony Blair, of course, is that he's the first opposition leader to become Prime Minister, albeit with a landslide majority, inheriting exactly the economic programme of the government he's thrown out of office. Now, if these policies didn't work for the Conservative Party, why should they work for New Labour?
I don't suppose he thinks it's a tragedy. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Alex Salmond.
Well, one thing, Jonathan, can you do
no,
something
I'm
for
sorry,
me?
got to move on, sorry.
Well, just one small thing. In your captions, could you describe us as the SNP and not as others? That would be gratefully received in Scotland.
You are only others sometimes, but you are very often SNP, and we've reported your particular results, as you know, right the way through the night, and we will do so during the day.
But I take the point.
Take the point, OK. There will be much excitement and expectation today. Comings and goings at the palace, movings in and movings out at Downing Street, a day of constitutional drama. So how will the handover of power take place, and when? In the next hour or so now, John Major will say farewell to his staff and then leave Downing Street for the last time. He'll be driven to Buckingham Palace to offer his resignation to the Queen, and then we think he'll probably go straight back home to Huntingdon. Immediately after John Major has left, the Queen will call Tony Blair to the palace and ask him to form a new government. Then the new Prime Minister will be driven in what had been John Major's Daimler back to Downing Street to take up his official residence. He's sure to be met there by a huge crowd of well-wishers and supporters, and our cameras are there, will be there to bring you those events as they happen. Indeed, they are there already, at least in the person of Jackie Ashley. Jackie, what's happening down there at the moment?
Good morning, Jonathan. Well, there's an air of great anticipation here. Several hundred press and photographers are gathered. Let me just tell you, first of all, that John Major came back earlier this morning. He then had two visits, first of all from Brian Mulwiney, and then from Lord Archer, Geoffrey Archer that was. And I understand both of those two gentlemen were trying to persuade Mr Major not to throw in the towel just yet, to hang on as leader for a little while the Conservative Party has time to think back on these results and sort itself out. Of course, we don't know what Mr Major's going to do. He has more immediate things on his mind. He's coming out, we understand, about 11:10. He may well speak to us here in Downing Street, having said goodbye to his staff. Then he'll be getting into this blue Jaguar, which I hope you can see just behind me, and he'll be driven off to the palace there for his audience with the Queen. That'll happen at 11:30. We understand then that the same blue Jaguar will take him off to wherever he wants to go, and that will probably be Huntingdon. At 12:30, Tony Blair goes in and sees the Queen, and it's then that he officially becomes Prime Minister, and we expect him back here at about 1:30. While he's at the palace, we understand his children will be brought in, so they'll be ready to greet him when he comes.
Thank you, Jackie. We'll be joining you for all of that. And now Nicholas Owen outside Buckingham Palace. Nicholas, tell us, pick up the story from there.
Indeed, I agree with all of Jackie's timings, Jonathan. We think at just about an hour's time, Mr Major's car will come down and he will go through the right-hand gates of Buckingham Palace. Now, if you look across the Buckingham Palace there, just beyond the police horses, there's the archway there. The car will drive through there into the quadrangle. He will get out, go through what's called the King's Door, up the stairs and into the audience room, where he and the Queen will have a private meeting. We're not quite sure what they say, but it's probably awfully sorry, regrets and so on, a handshake. We gather Norma Major might just be there too. Mr Major then comes out, he goes off down the Mall after a decent diplomatic interval, quarter of an hour or so. Mr Blair will arrive, probably with Sherry, through the gate, through the archway into the quadrangle. He will go up into the room and the Queen will say to him, Mr Blair, welcome and so forth, handshake, can you form a government? And I think Mr Blair will at that point say yes.
Nicholas Owen, we will be back there when that happens. We guess that one thing is certain is that he will say yes when asked that